Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak. I'm so glad to talk with you today. I had last week off, so with everything that's happening in the world, I'm glad to be back with you so that we can get some of this straight. I'm going to continue my talk on authenticity this week just because it was scheduled and advertised. Next week, I think I'm going to be talking about this virus that's going around and the conscious implications of it. Why? We'll never know all the reasons why it's here, but I have some real good ones in my mind. I don't see, I haven't written about this because there's so many opinions out there that I just didn't want to add to the confusion, quite frankly. What I'm realizing is I think our radio show is the forum for this, where we can talk and ask questions and that kind of thing. And I think that is what we'll do next week. I do want to put on the table, I have quite a different opinion about this from all the doom and gloom, or the jollies, by the way, that are going around right now about all of this. Not that this is a jolly thing, but all the I get some well-intentioned emails about how great all this is going to be and is and stuff like that. I think we ought to put this all in perspective and find out what it means, honestly, to us. So, as human beings, But today, we're going to finish, or not finish, our talk on authenticity. I have a feeling that I'm going to be doing today on authenticity, next week on the coronavirus, the following week on authenticity again, because this is such a vast subject. And I am doing my best, but to try to get all of it in any amount of time, quite frankly, is just something that is not going to happen. Well, hello, Lisa. Aren't you sweet? Good morning to you, too. For those of you that are on Blog Talk Radio, please do keep in mind I'm also on Facebook Live, and my friends and dear people, dear listeners who sometimes I don't even know, who are brand new, write me on Facebook Live, and I'm just delighted. You are, too, invited to call. We are at 347-850-1647. This gets you on the air. There seems to be a bit of confusion. Hi, Kat. Oh, I'm so glad to hear from you too, darling. I've missed you all. There seems to be a bit of confusion about how to listen in and how to get on the air. So this is the on-air number, 347-850-1647. I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. However, if you want to listen, go to my website and go onto radio shows, and you can toggle back and forth between Blog Talk Radio or Facebook Live, depending on what kind of technology is working today. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So there we are. Guys, I hope all of you all are doing well in your self-isolation. I know this is the most peculiar time, that we cannot deny. And there have been other peculiar times like this. As you know, I'm married to a man who is from Europe. And he was telling me something that, in 9 years of marriage, we've never even talked about, which was what his life was like when Chernobyl exploded over there. He was in Austria, and it certainly affected all of Europe. Everything was radioactive. It was absolutely martial law to stay inside, or something like it. So guys, these things do happen. They don't happen too frequently in our lifetimes, but but we need to know how to handle them. That's what next week is going to be about. I don't think it's going to be material you've heard before. So let's talk. You may or may not agree with me as well, and that's fine too, of course. Let's just have a discussion. Let's do a prayer, getting us all on the same page, and then I want to go into talking about authenticity and what you can start doing about it. Now, we've done several weeks of what's in the way of total authenticity. I want to say something to all of us and put it on the table. There's no time like the present to start one or two of these points, guys. We are simply not too old to do this. As a matter of fact, what I am finding is when you start this, if indeed you you are of a certain age, what's interesting, because I work with all ages. I work with 20-year-olds and I work with people that are as old or older than I am. And I want to say what's really interesting about getting a late start is that you go faster because you have all of that life wisdom built up. And if this is your calling, the universe jumps in there and helps you in a million ways. So don't be lying to yourself saying you're too old or you've made such a mess of it or you can't do this or you can't do that. That's just simply not true. And I want to say that with all my heart. Just start somewhere so that you can live a better life, okay? And you'll be rewarded for it. And the universe really does jump in there as you remove blocks and give you a happier and happier life just because that is the energetic, natural thing to have happen, right? If God is love. But you see, you first have to take a chance on that, right? Are you going to see me blowing my nose or wiping it? And I do not have the coronavirus. I'm perfectly fine. What I do have are allergies. And it's a strange time for this to hit all of us because it's an early spring. And man, our allergies out there, pollen is out there and sometimes it gets us. So just wanted to put that on the table. Let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything in this world is. Thank you so much for exactly what we have. That may sound strange to some, but exactly where we have is the starting point to do all this work on a deeper level, to know ourselves and our authenticity, to be real, to know you as a sustaining and beautiful force in our lives, always. That no matter what happens, you are there at the center of it. Not that you have caused it, but that you are present in it for us to get the most out of it and understand ourselves on deeper and deeper levels. Dear God, be with all of us. Humanity is suffering right now, and we are enormously compassionate for that. We ask that you make us smart, keep everybody safe, and that we open ourselves to the lessons and the wonderful things that are here for us, because yes, indeed, they're wonderful things too. They may not come the way we want them to come. So open our minds to gifts of all kinds being given in all the ways they're given. It is our awareness, we know, that needs to open. Thank you, dear God, right now for this lesson today and where we are in our journey to authenticity. For this is what every show, every lecture, every training course I've ever given, every acting class I've ever taught has all been about. We open ourselves now to receive the information beyond the egoic child's mind and its distortions so that we may be happy and live better lives in grace, in love, and in you. And we say these prayers now as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We thank you so much, dear God. And we open now to this with all thanksgiving, and so it is. Amen. Okay, guys, here we go. Let's launch. Now, I got lots of opinions about this subject. That's the good or bad news, depending on how you look at it. I will be launching in with a lot of my ideas, but I want to tell you that a very nice article that I thought was pretty good was by, oh my word, how am I going to pronounce that name? Tchiki, Tchiki Davis. She's a PhD. She's written an article on the internet that's posted there called Develop Authenticity, 20 Ways to be a More Authentic Person. Okay, well, nothing's that easy. When I sat down and just let my mind go through it free, I'm already up to 69 or 70 things. So I don't think 20 by all means covers it, and I'm not sure that 70 will either, quite frankly. I mean, we're trying to describe, when we're talking about authenticity, what life really is all about, isn't it? It isn't for everybody. Some people are called to being authentic and some people are not. Why isn't that all right? The answer is, it certainly is. We all have our lessons to learn here. But if indeed you are called to the study of consciousness, if indeed you are propelled to listen to the show for some reason, even though it might make you mad or upset you from time to time, and it does, keep in mind that there's a strategy here, and that is we want to shake up your cells a little bit. The cells of your body hold information that can free you or block you. And it's very important that we create some change there, because one of the facts of life is that everything in the world, including your cells and your personal growth, go from chaos to order. Therefore, if I'm shaking up some old beliefs that you may have in the emotional body, if I am challenging them, if I am asking you to think a different way, do a different thing, think a different thought, have different spiritual experiences here, and your cells are agitated, wow, that's the first step to something opening in you. Do you realize that? Because everything goes from chaos to new order. Think of your lives, dear hearts. Anytime a big change occurred, something occurred first, which was chaos. Some sort of chaos, okay? I used to be enormously independent. And then I broke my foot. I was told I was going to break my foot if I didn't slow down. Didn't slow down. Broke my foot. Huge lessons in that. I thank a darling friend of mine for saying, you got to learn to need people. I realized the truth of her statement so much. I needed to need people. Everybody in the world needed to be needed. In a few months, my darling husband came along. I couldn't have attracted him. I couldn't have put that last piece in place without that lesson. Sorry, I was so stubborn and had to break my foot. You know, the physical body is the last thing that jars us and wakes us up. Tells us how to live differently if we're listening to it. Now, that was my story about that. So, we're going to be launching off now into this article, and then I'm going to, of course, do my thing. Can't help but do my thing. I guess that's why you listen. I hope it is anyway. You never know. All right. This Dr. Davis certainly puts forth the fact that since childhood we have all tried to fit in, we've all tried to be liked, we've all tried to be accepted by human beings. Certainly we tried this with our parents, and whatever we got from them, we usually generalized to the general population. That's just what the child's mind does. I'm going to launch into my program, Mama, which is to tell you that there are 3 ways that help a child adapt. Number 1, we normalize things. cruelty, harshness to self, coldness, anything that happens, if it happens consistently, we say, well, that's normal, right? And many times, guys, it isn't. Okay, so we normalize. Number two, we generalize. My mother's like this, so all people are like this. My mother's like this, so all women are like this. My father's like this, all men are like this. Society in general is like this because my siblings didn't like me or were difficult. Okay. The third thing we do is we will escalate our issues to some lofty version of themselves to convince us that God wants us to do whatever it is we're doing that is not in our best interest, like self-sacrifice or anything else we're doing. Love our mothers or our fathers in the old way of the child, because that's supportive. Never let ourselves go beyond in success our mothers and fathers, because that's not loyal. Guys, all of that is the child's mind. You are an individual with influences, absolutely, you are charged with right now, losing some of them and developing some of them that are uniquely you. This is life. This is our evolvement as a species and as an individual who seeks to be happy. You understand, I'm sure you do. Okay. Now, that said, there are so many things that we've forgotten in our lives and left off in ourselves that we have now got to know more about. We live in a society that emphasizes, and I think all societies have, but with social media and the information that's coming to us from all sources right now. This was really interesting because I read an article, I think it was, I want to say now maybe 30 years ago, that we were going to have a whole lot more information coming to us than we ever have, and we better know how to take care of our nervous systems and adapt to what? To who we are, and having that in relationship to who we are. It does not become who we are, you see. If we don't know who we are, you're everything. And by the way, nothing, which is the other side of everything, right? So it's really important more than ever. If you are one of those people, like many people are, and by the way, there are many people out there, and we're all being challenged, by the way, with this. I don't mean to say that there are people that are not being challenged like this. Everybody's being challenged in their way to know who they are and act upon that and not off what you're being told. Look, I love the media. I've worked in it my whole life. But there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are a lot of lies. There just are. It's the world we live in right now. It's extremely important that we do our own research and have our own thoughts and be in the channel of the Ascended God so that we can receive information that sustains us. And our God should sustain us all the time. It should be something so that we are not afraid. So this is what consciousness gives you as a gift, and what authenticity gives you as a gift is the ability to have such a strong and viable sense of self that you watch the world go by and you know who you are. So, what's happening right now in society, and I want you all to see it, is everybody is doing a presentation of who they think they should be instead of who they really are. There's nothing wrong with who you really are. And if you think there is, we have to go back to the attachment styles that we've just spent 2 or 3 weeks talking about. Now, that's not the only influence here that's in the way. Listen to all of it. You got influences. You're human, aren't you? Of course. And those influences are very, very human. Nevertheless, humans are here to challenge those things. Some of us are. Some of us aren't. As I said, it's all right. We all have various lessons to learn, and anybody who comes along and says, we're all here to love, or we're all here to do this, or we're all here to do this, or take care of yourself only this way, or do this. Generalities aren't working anymore. You better know who you are. This is the age. I said it in my book. I say it again. This is the age of individual consciousness. That means you need to know who you are and get to work. I need to get to work too. We are all getting to work on deeper levels of ourselves. That's great, huh? If you say no, and that would call it unsolicited personal growth. Well, you can think that way. You can tremendous burden. What a privilege. And what an interesting time to live. What is that Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times. I actually would rather live in an interesting time than an uninteresting time. How you gonna, what that everything has accelerated so much in our world is that more information is coming to us. And we're all so interested in it. And therefore we go faster. And we will continue to do so. Would you all excuse me 2 seconds? I've got to reach a pillow because I feel like I am just straining my little neck to be up higher. There we go. Sorry, I need to sit up higher. Thank you. All right, so let's go back. Being authentic, according to Dr. Davis, says that you act in ways that show your true self and how you truly feel. Rather than showing a particular side of yourself, or I will say a presentation of yourself, you express yourself in a genuine way. This means that to succeed in being authentic, here's the rub, you first have to know who your true self actually is. Beyond what you think you know about yourself. Here's the esoteric quality about all this. You just don't know what you don't know. You're not aware of what you're not aware of. It's just the truth. So we've got to go on a journey to find out we don't know. Oh, it's way too easy to say, I've never been happier in my life than I am right now. I don't want to mess it up. You're messing it up by not doing anything else. Because nothing stays the way it is. Life is going to smack you to say, think of something else. Deepen, grow, evolve. It's just the way it is. So it's really important to realize how life works and to go with. So that's what we're talking about here. To know who you actually are, you need to know what your influences are, what helps you, what's real and what isn't real in you. Because all of us have said, I am that, when we should have said, I have that. And so now we're all muddled and all confused, and we don't understand who we are and what we are and what's down there. And I can tell you right now, what you're going to find that's down there is a wonderful union with the ascended God you are. And all the beneficence of that energetic state. And if you want to read more about this, please get my book called The Life You Want. It's on the website. It's going to tell you what should be down in that emotional body. And it's very simple. There are about 8 very simple things like awe and unconditional love. Sorry about the dog barking. It's what happens. And forgiveness, compassion, and several other things. Okay. You know, we are in a very remote section. That's sometimes why our speed, even though we have the fastest speed possible, isn't fast enough for the internet. And we have lots of animals up here, foxes and squirrels and many, many other things. And sometimes they all appear on our porch, and it's almost too much for little Poodle to be able to tolerate without what you just heard. Okay. To know who you actually are, according to Dr. Davis, she says you must have self-awareness, mindfulness, and self-acceptance, and I would agree with that. I put it sometimes a different way, and that is we have to learn how to have awareness, and that deepens in consciousness, and that leads to enlightenment. That's where we're going. We're saying the same thing. All of these things are critical, and I would say even more. I would say incredible knowledge. I would say you've got to know as much as you can about everything. Now, she goes into why authenticity matters, and I think this is really important. She says we're constantly bombarded with media that tells us who to be and what to want and how we should express ourselves. By the way, if you're listening on the radio. All these influences chip away slowly at our ability, she says, to be our authentic selves. I'm going to also put in there, you watch the media, it tells you how to think. That's dangerous. Think and what to feel. And I don't think that's good. I've said since I've been an adult, quite frankly, that the news should just be the news without emotion. You should form your own opinions about it. But we've developed a society, a world society, ladies and gentlemen, that wait to be told or act on how they should feel. And I think a lot of this is the hysteria out there right now. So guys, if you're going to do this work, we got to find out who you are. There's nothing wrong with who you are. I am here to tell you. Okay. So, every time you're someone you're not, you're telling yourself that who you are isn't okay. This is called in psychology entrenchment. Every time you use one of these devices to make yourself feel better and to fit in or to look better or to whatever, okay, you're actually telling yourself that it's not okay to be you. So hiding and suppressing who you really are can end up leaving you certainly lonely, disconnected from others, and worthless. In a time of self-isolation, it's really nice to be connected to others. You understand? And not in the same way you used to be. There's something that is demanding that you work with energy right now and not do things the same way you used to. Okay. Going on with what she said. So I want you to know that every time we use an issue that takes us out of who we really are and into our pretense, perhaps, we're crossing our boundaries and we are entrenching ourselves and saying we're not all right. And our subconscious minds do hear that and do know. So we're more inclined to then be false the next time as well. You see? Good. What we do in the moment often sabotages who we are and a lifetime experience of happiness and peace and learning and all sorts of good things. Okay. We're constantly balancing, she says, our inner and outer aspects of ourselves. I'm going to put this on the table to you, and I'm going to tell you the answer, but if you want to do the exercise, great. I had my class describe, my advanced class, I said, describe who you are when you're alone in your house by yourself. Describe what you feel, what you do, what you say to yourself, who you are. Give me your characteristics. And then describe your public face. And they did. Some of them were vastly dissimilar. And I put on the table, don't you think they ought to be the same thing? If you're authentic, you're the same alone and by yourself as you are in public. It's the same face. And this is why people feel there's a transparency there. They feel they can trust you when those things match. You understand? You might want to do that exercise. I think it's a good one, by the way. Okay. Okay. She says, we are driven to find our place in society, and we want to be respected for who we really are and what we have to contribute. Well, all that's fine and good. I say here, what brain, what mind are you working from? If you're working from the egoic child's mind, you got some work to do before we're authentic. Those things can be achieved also in the highest self because it's the right thing to do. Because it's the natural course for the higher mind. So I say here, better know which mind you're working from. We'll talk about that in just a minute, all right? She says many of us are propelled even further, desiring to know and live our purpose, to find deeper meaning in our lives and to feel fulfillment that comes from being a more authentic person. Well, that's why we're doing this, aren't we? And she goes on to say that we live in a society there that values superficiality. I'm not sure it does. I think it lives it. I'm not sure it values it. I'm not sure it values it. I see some people valuing some shallow things. Really, I do. But they don't last very long. If they embrace it for too long, there's usually a reason, issues deep down inside that have you stay in a cult too long or that kind of thing. Certainly there's no criticism here. I work with a lot of people like that, and there are cults and there are cults. There are formal cults and there are cults that are called, in certain cases, family. So, you know, we have to look at life and see it in all its aspects sometimes, funny and otherwise. She says we live in a society that values superficiality. I think it's certainly a stop along the way for everybody, don't you? And that's the key, is don't stop there. She says that strives for perfection. You're absolutely right about that. I think everybody is out of their insecure attachment style. We've talked about that. For heaven's sakes, if you find yourself valuing perfection, it's really important to prove to yourself otherwise, and that your perfection is in the imperfection of you as a human being, so that you absolutely embrace that and say, you know what? There's perfection here, but it's of God, and that is a part of me that I can use, not trying to be perfect, but just trying to be authentic. And then you're able to surf that wave in a safe and exciting and interesting way. That wave of being on the cutting edge of change and growth and opportunity. She says that the world defines success as the dollars in your bank account and not by how well we live our values every day. And I want to put that on the table. I think certainly that's true. However, and it's not just the dollars and cents, it can also be the hierarchy of position, in a business. But we are either being able to live with ourselves or we are not. And I think when we're starting the journey of authenticity, we've got to ask, why are we doing things? Are we doing things for outside reasons? Or can we really truly live with ourselves in every aspect of our lives? Are we really honoring who we are, bringing our values to a situation? That's the only place gratification is. You all heard me lecture, a year ago, on the difference between pleasure and gratification. Well, it's very pleasurable when people say, "Oh, you're just great." I like it too. "Oh, you're just great. Wonderful." Means something in that moment. But guys, gratification is when you know who you are. When you know who you are and what you believe, and you like that part of you that is all of you. The one who has intentions and puts them into practice, brings their values to every situation. You'll hear other lectures about how to find your values. Please go back and listen to those shows. All right, so a lot of our beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors were taught. And so now we find ourselves living the way we think we should. Oh, I love that word. Should be thrown into the trash, by the way. Or should live instead of the way we really are to live as ourselves. So the part of us that is full of pretense is often called, in her article, it's very important, the adaptive self. The self that prioritizes fitting in, getting along, and she says, and I think this is right, generally doing what we're told. This self is not without value and purpose, she goes on to say, and I agree with her, because it helps us to be functioning members of society. But if you are feeling inauthentic, if you are striving to open that door and find out who you really are, we have to address the adaptive self and realize, in my opinion, that we've learned our lessons too well. Out of our insecurity, we have learned our lessons too well. And the individual has been sacrificed. Who you really are. And who you really are is the first step to finding out why you're here and what you have to give. Doesn't work the other way around, by the way. Not really. The profound things of what you have to give this world and what you have to contribute come out of who you really are. That's when the fulfillment is there. So, we've got to look at now how to develop authenticity. So, I'm going to put certain things on the table. Some of these are her ideas, some of them are mine. the first thing that I say is find out what's in the way. That's the first part of your process of awareness. You find out what's in the way. You find out what you're being motivated by that really doesn't serve you, and certainly is from the ego child's mind and not from the highest self. You find out what your blocks are. That is not to say that we must focus on those things. You know, I think that therapy is very important, but when it's done right, it's not just about how wrong you are, but where you're going and how right you are. And what you have to give, what your wisdom is. But we do have to address what's in the way. We just don't stay there. But it's a real frank experience for years, because we are motivated by all sorts of tricky things. The way we've wired ourselves and put things together, and we tell ourselves we're doing so well and we have changed and this is, when it's all the same. We're just doing it every time. Every time, and we don't know it. Oh, the people that we're playing this out with all have new faces, jobs have new titles. But in the end, we get the same thing again if we're following our old pattern. So we have to look at these things, right? Good. Number 2, for me, is you need to know the difference between your ego child's mind experience and your highest self experience. Now, if you were going to trick yourself, and we all are, by the way, what's one of the basic things you would do to trick yourself? Get those two things mixed up. So when I first start working with you, it becomes very important for me to say ego child's mind, highest self. This is no arbitrary decision on my part to tell you. That's ridiculous. I've got to teach you how to see the two differences, and here's how to see them now. I'm going to put that on the table. The highest self always creates an experience where everybody wins. It's me and you together creating an agreement to agree or to disagree. It's always about us. But hi, Pat. Hang on just a second. I want to read Pat's note to me. Yeah, we have some real heroes out there. Pat was just writing about his experience in the world, and we certainly do have some heroes working on the front line of this virus, and it's awfully good to hear from you too, Pat. I was thinking about you a couple of days ago and wishing you well. By the way, guys, if you think we just pray for you on Sunday, you are sadly mistaken. I think that all of us that are doing this work and all of us that are listening to these shows really keep this community in mind and have you in our prayers. And I certainly want you to know that. I'm certainly one of those people in this community, and I urge you to be too. I'm so glad to hear from you, Pat. So that's the higher self mind. And the higher self mind also understands what it's motivated by, you know. And usually the motivations, in fact, every time the motivations in the higher self are really motivated by caring and love and forgiveness and those wonderful words that are there in the emotional body naturally. Okay, now let's go to the ego child's mind. The ego child's mind is motivated as well. The motivations are always very self-indulgent. Now, the irony here, and the thing I think that confuses people about these two minds, is that you can have both of them active in a situation. My job, if I'm working with you, is to root out those egoic child's mind motivations so you're left with a purer form. You know, so this is about your consciousness work. So you're left in in a purer state. You're more loving. You are motivated because it's the right thing to do, not because of any other reason. So going back to the ego child's mind, it's always about you. Your motivation is always about you. In other words, it's all about me, me, me. No matter what I'm saying to you, that's what's underneath. It's about me, me, me. Or it's about you, you, you at the expense of me, which I have then made it all about me, 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 because I am the victim and the martyr. No way to get around it. So, pardon me, nose running. So, that's what I'm wanting you all to realize. You've got to see the difference. Well, if you never look below the surface to see what you're motivated by, how are you going to know which mind you're in? And many times we say, I'm so confused. Confusion is an issue. It means that the ego child's mind sending up confusion so you don't see what you're doing. Okay? Many times we say, I don't know what I'm motivated by. And we go, oh my God, that is an egoic motivation, isn't it? When we start talking about it. You see? And all of a sudden you see it. Do you realize there is absolutely no judgment here? And I don't want you judging yourself for this, because this is the way of human beings to grow and evolve and to go to the higher mind. There's only this path. Oh, we all of us that do this kind of work, we have different paths to it. But the fact is, this is the only path. You've got to know yourself. You've got to self-accept, ultimately. All this, trying to distance ourselves from who we really are, you cannot. It's sending you in the wrong direction. You're taking too long because you're going that way instead of embracing it. You can't escape the past. It's who you are, but it's not all who you are. You're a lot more than that. But you got to have that in the mix. That's the self-acceptance part of this, right? Okay. So stop trying to avoid. I think that is just one of the big things in life that gets everybody in trouble. Our avoiding the dark side. For God's sake, it's part of you. Embrace it. Then make other decisions. Until you acknowledge it, you can't choose something else. You have to own it to do something else. Third thing I want to put on the table here before we even go into her material, and this she says later on too, but I think I'm moving it up because it's that important. You better know what your values are, guys. Please go back to that. I'm going to say again, the internet is filled with lists of values. Find one of the longest ones you can find. Print it out. Look at that. See what values you have. Reduce it to 3. Because I want you to be very conscious of using them or not using them. Do not choose values you want to become. Choose values you are right now. Realize that when you move out of those values, you are very unhappy, and your body tells you with anxiety and fear and with anything else. Right now, the world is panicking over a virus, and yet I bet a good part of these people will say that they really believe in God. Then why panic? Then why panic the way it is? Yes, you take care of yourself. You don't get in crowds. You self-isolate. You call your friends. You wash your hands. You spray them with, 180 proof alcohol. Absolutely. You do those things and anything else you feel comfortable with. But for God's sake, have a God that's right there with you. And if you don't, I'm not fussing. I'm saying we better find that in you. That you're caught up in the egoic child's God, the fear, the something's going to happen to me. Do you believe that anything can hurt you and thwart you? that you aren't in agreement with in some way? It really can't. Now, agreement, don't you hear me say that you're at fault. I'm never saying that. I'm saying there are life lessons here for us that we don't even know about. And for us to shut down and be afraid and throw our learning in the toilet instead of opening our minds and seeing what's there on levels that we don't even know about is a mistake. That's all I'm saying. We really need to know more. It's just a direction, right? And a choice we have to make for that direction. Okay. All right. Please look at your values. Please choose 3 that you are. Observe yourself living them. Observe yourself bringing them to every situation, whether it is a business meeting, an argument with your husband, a walk with your dog, a talk with your neighbor. Bring them to every single solitary situation. Observe that when you don't, you feel really bad. Observe that if you deny all 3 in you and go across those boundaries, you're going to feel worse than if you deny one. Get to know this part of you. Live those 3 values, and when you're doing it and doing it well and never betraying yourself by crossing those boundaries, add 2 more. Same rules apply. You have to be that already. It's enormously helpful in your journey to consciousness. Now, going into I got lots more to say, but let's look at what she's got here first. She said, observe yourself objectively to develop authenticity. Learn to observe yourself like a fly on the wall. Watch yourself as you live in the present moment, observing how your adaptive self behaves, what it believes, how it reacts under pressure, how it responds to challenges. Yeah, I will agree with that. However, here's the thing. A lot of people vacate. They go somewhere else when they're threatened, and they don't even know they are. I've worked for years with people when I say, you're not even there. Hey, where'd you go? Come back. Bring your mind back here. I'm not hurting you. I'm not challenging you. I'm not threatening you. Come back. People are going away from themselves all the time. They don't realize they're doing it. Why? Because it's normalized. You understand that? So all this just sounds great. You can't do it without somebody helping you. I don't think you can. Not certainly on the depth that I know will give you the kind of happy, marvelous life that you desire. I say that yes, we should all be observers. I think of it as, there's a reason that in a battle, the general is on his horse on a hill. I've watched too many movies, can you tell? And not down in the field getting all bloody and nasty with everybody else. Somebody has to have the overview of what's going on. Well, this is no different. Your higher self needs to be turned on. You need to observe. You need to know what you are supposed to observe in every situation. You need to have part of you be that general on the hill watching. That's what we mean by perspective. You've got to have a different perspective here. If you're just down there getting all bloody, you don't have much perspective. You don't know what's going on. Not as a whole. You're only dealing with that one moment, and you're either running away from it, or you're fighting like hell through it, or something. So you do need to develop this witness. The higher self witness, so that you can see what's going on. So you can see, I love working with my clients because they get to a place where they say, okay, let me tell you what's wrong. And they're usually right. In fact, they're always right. Once in a while, I'll deceive and I'll say, you're self-deceiving in this, here's this. And they'll go, oh my God, look, I'm self-deceiving. No arguments about it. It's just wonderful how everybody wakes up. Awareness, waking up, first step. First step. One of the most important things you'll ever do. Okay. That's what I wanted to say about her point there. Number 2, she says, examine family belief systems to develop authenticity. Oh, yes, I think this is extremely important. It comes out of your work in the awareness and in the consciousness stages. One of the core issues that we all have is the culture we came from, the family culture we came from. I'm not talking about what other cultures, the political or socioeconomic or anything else cultures. I'm talking about the family culture. That's the one that you need to look at. I've noticed for years how there is a culture to families. For example, I wrote some of them down. You are the lonely family, the unsuccessful family, the heartbroken family, the trying too hard family and never succeeding, the avoidant family, the narcissistic family. The list can go on and on and on, but it's a culture that you came from. If you're saying, I have no idea what the culture is I came from, then we need to look and find that out because it's greatly influencing who you are, which only came from that culture, but doesn't mean that you're having to live it now unless you don't find it. If you don't look at it, have at it. Does that make sense? You understand? Okay. Her third point. Open a dialogue between the adaptive self and the authentic self. Oh, if we only could. It doesn't happen that way, and it doesn't happen that way in the beginning when you need it. No, awareness has to happen. You have to be aware. Your dialogue between those two selves changes a lot, but there is no dialogue when you don't know the difference between them, you see? If you don't know the difference between the ego child's mind and the higher self, where's the dialogue? So I think that sometimes that just doesn't work. You're using the adaptive self to help you through threatening times. Now, the interesting thing is we don't often say, I'm threatened. We just react as if there's a threat because our conscious mind is saying, I shouldn't be afraid of that, right? And you're talking yourself out of even looking at what's wrong because, by God, you are afraid. And your anxiety is just a little signpost saying, I'm afraid and I really should look at this. But if you're telling yourself something else, you see it's not going to work. You are full as a human being. Now, this isn't you because you're bad. Don't you go there. No, as a human being, you are full of emotional contradictions. And you better find out what those are because that's the reason you're blocked or you're stuck. You want to go forward and yet you're going 2 steps behind. We'll find out why you're taking those 2 steps to go backwards. We got to find those things out, you see? It's not a question of will. All of you all have a great will. It's not a question of will. This is esoteric change, deepening, evolving, and becoming who you really are. All along. And we're scared to death to do it. Isn't that silly? Because it goes against things, goes against old traditions and beliefs, and our parents never did it. Okay. It's really interesting. eye is doing something weird there. I'm going to wipe that off right there on the phone. I want to tell you a funny story. I want to tell you a story that, is it still there? What the heck? You know, I find that if I leave a dot there, this may be me, but I'll look at the dot the whole time. I'll never hear what anybody is saying. Is that awful? I'll just be mesmerized by, what the hell is that dot? Well, mine was mascara. I want to tell you a silly story. I had a dear mother, really I did. I know some of you don't have dear mothers, and I understand that. I was one of the lucky ones in terms of my mom, and she was dear. Nevertheless, she had issues, and here was one of them. And this is going to sound so trivial, but you know, it's just not, because we're doing the same thing in larger aspects of ourselves. So my mother always fought against, inside of her great contradiction was, am I a traditionalist or am I something else? And what is that? Now, we never talked about this because I didn't have the awareness to talk to her about this before she died. All those growing up years, I was doing the best I could too. Right? Every year, we got a green Christmas tree. Why? Because it was traditional. But my mother, ever the closet rebel, loved all these dramatic Christmas trees that were white and pink and foil and purple and all sorts of different things. It wasn't so much a preference for her, this green tree. It was fear of doing something else. Now, the reason I'm bringing up this ridiculously silly story is this. It's a ridiculously silly story. For God's sake, get a foil tree, a purple tree, get anything you want. Have a green tree too to make the transition easier for yourself. But don't be afraid. Don't say, I want it, I'm going to do it this year, I'm going to do it this year. She did this every year. I'll do it, and then go get a green tree. What we're afraid of is just about that silly. And there are ways, and this method that I use, let you have the green tree as long as you need it, but then gives you a different experience as well, and the green tree will eventually drop off. There are no enlightened traditionalists. And we have to challenge those things in us. I'm not saying don't be a traditionalist. I'm saying you've got a choice here, guys. Who are you? Okay. Moving along. Okay. That was that point. Another point of hers. Identify discrepancies to develop authenticity. Are you doing and saying things and being things because someone else taught you to do that? Well, sure, someone else did. Let me put it a different way. In the ego child's mind, you have two poles. Okay? I'm holding up, guys, 2 fingers on each side of the screen for those of you listening on the radio. Your father stands at one of the poles. Your mother stands at another of the poles. In the ego child's mind, we are continuing to bounce back and forth on these poles. Number one, if we did not like our fathers, we are repelled by that pole. So anything in life that reminds us of this, we run to the other pole. And let's say we did like our mother, so we secure to that. This is in our insecurity, right? We may not like either one of them, at which time we don't know who we are at all. We still don't know who we are authentically, but we're bouncing somewhere around, going, usually pinging off these poles. We run to something we think is different. It proves itself not to be. We run to the other one, go back and forth. We're little ping pong balls. I say that that's the ego child's mind for you right there. And what we must do in awareness and awakening consciousness is to realize we're not any of those, to realize what those influences were, to see whether we want those influences, to own who we really are, to see what we really want to believe, who we are, what's going to sustain us, deepen that. And we're somewhere here in the middle. We weren't any of those things started. That was the structure. Just began us. If we don't to work that is not us, how do we ever find the us? It's actually a privilege. So we can go, where's the us? What do I believe? What do I feel? What do I think? Who am I? What do I express? I worked with a woman for the last couple of weeks. She's a friend of mine. And we have finally gotten her to the place where she is doing something creative, because she has been the anxious preoccupied, the fearful, not anxious preoccupied, the fearful avoidant attachment style. If you don't understand what I mean, please listen to the last several weeks of class. She has cut herself off from any creative pursuit. Why? Because it would express herself. There is no self to express. She doesn't paint, she doesn't write, she doesn't sculpt, she doesn't do anything, she doesn't try anything. She doesn't take a chance when she's cooking, she follows the recipe. Come on, what? Where is you? And where is the oomph? And the interesting thing is she finally got around to doing it this week. She finally did. She even said to me, I couldn't have done this a year ago. I said, I know, but now you can. She painted a picture and she sent it to me. And it was the cutest, happiest picture. She, of course, criticized it immediately. All I saw was joy. I hope she keeps it up. Identify discrepancies, she says. Well, I think identifying your discrepancies, I think sometimes are what all of these radio shows have been about. Yeah, what are you crossing in terms of values? Is a sense of self there? Do you express it in your gardening, in your cooking, in your painting? What are you doing to find you and then express you? Because those are the two parts of this, aren't they? Find and then expressing. You find it and then you express it. Okay, let's keep going. I want to put something else on the table before we leave that subject. This is something I wrote. We take anything in life and we make a metaphor out of it. And if we do that without realizing what we're doing, it can block us. I can give you a lot of those ideas in my own life and what I did. I remember years ago, I wanted to sell my parents' house. It should have sold right away. It was a great lot. The house needed to come down, by the way, but it was in a neighborhood where they built mega mansions, you know. It's just a lot. And so I worked on myself a lot. I made sure that most of my metaphors were gone. This was my mother's dream house. I realized that. It was not mine. It was my mother's. I got that. It was also the place that my mother spent the majority of her life. She was dead now, by the way. And she died in that room with me standing beside her. Okay, I knew all of that. So the house now has been sold. I had realized enough of that so that the house was sold. So I didn't realize how tired I was going to be moving into my new place, right? So it took me 3 days to have enough energy to drive over there and see what they were doing to that house. When I got there, the house was already gone. And there was a bulldozer in the yard evening it out for this new McMansion, right? I felt, as I sat there in my car, I didn't get out of the car, sat there in my car, just looked at it for a brief few seconds. I was aware of something going, shutting down in me. Wow. I felt it. I didn't give it any thought. It never occurred to me to tell all my myriad of friends that I had been over there and that's what was going on that property. I didn't say one word to anybody. It just shut down, and that was that. And that night, I had a nightmare. And I woke up screaming, and here was the nightmare. I was standing at a window. There was someone behind me that I was talking to. I don't know who that was. Of course, it was me, right? Because everything in a dream is you, by the way. And I looked out the window and across the hills, and there was a house over there. Just a house. It wasn't even a literal house of my parents. And there was a house, and I said, that looks like the Palace of Versailles. Guys, my mother was a French teacher, and she lived in France for a while. Okay? That looks like the palace. It did not in the dream, but this is what the images were. That looks like the Palace of Versailles. And then out of the blue, this huge tsunami, bigger than anything in reality could ever be, came and smashed it to bits. And I woke up, sweating, screaming, sad, upset. And what do you think that dream was about? It was me letting the last of my mother and her dreams and my mother itself go concerning that house. Guys, we are making metaphors for everything. It's very important that we bring those to consciousness, that we address them. And once you have done that enough and your life is moving on, your body will bring up the rest. And the interesting addendum to that story was then, within a few months, my real estate agent who sold that piece of property called me and she said, would you like to go over and see what they've done with your parents' property? And, there is going to be a caravan, and that's the real estate caravans that come and they put a little food out and you walk through the house and you walk on the property. The real estate agents see what they have to sell, right? All right. So I was delighted to be invited. I thought, well, I'll go. I did not feel one thing. I was expecting to feel sad or feel a little twinge here. I felt absolutely nothing. It wasn't mine anymore. I had nothing to do with that piece of property. It was already changed. I had moved on. It had moved on. And I bless the new people who were going to buy the house, whoever they were, and wish them great happiness. Put that out to the ethers. And that was that. Now, why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story to say that in her saying, identify discrepancies to develop authenticity, you don't know what they are until you do some work on yourself. Because it is a little trick that our ego child's mind plays on us, that things are symbols and metaphors, okay? That house was a symbol and a metaphor for my mother, our relationship, her hopes and dreams that I had to divorce myself from because they were not mine. But out of love for her and out of love for your family or your whoever was your influence, you're doing the same thing. And we've got to see what we're doing, guys, and move on. All right? All right. 15 more minutes. All right. This has to be done, guys, with self-awareness. That's why I say awareness, consciousness, and enlightenment. That is the path you're taking. You have to bring up great awareness. And to bring up great awareness, you got to bring up great honesty. And none of us are trained in this kind of self-honesty. We're just not. We're trained to be deceptive. We're trained to lie to ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that, except it's in your way. And we got to learn something else now. It's a natural evolvement of you as a human being. You as a fine mind. And you as your higher self. This doctor goes on to say, examine your doubts to develop authenticity. I have a different take on that a little bit. Yes, you are going to have doubts. You may have them in the beginning because there may be a fear of the unknown, the fear of doing something different. It may feel like a tremendous risk to you. If you've always loved absolutes, going into a very esoteric area where there is a deepening of everything you know, and there is no real absolute except God, and the ascended God and ascended mind that you are seems pretty scary, especially the more you've relied on the ego child's mind, the more afraid we are, because ego child's mind sends up propaganda saying, don't do anything but what I've told you to do. Live within your parameters, live within your limits that I've set for you. That's the only way you'll survive. Well, if you're going to believe all that crapola, you're going to have to get past it to do something else. That's not the hard part. The hard part is when you are close to surrendering the ego child's mind. Then the propaganda starts coming up that is very subtle and very deceptive. And it tells you to doubt and to question what would really help you. Now, by the time you get to that point in the work that I do, those doubts you recognize as what they are. They're the ego child's mind. They can come up in a lot of different ways. They can say, that a coach isn't good for you anymore. You can say, oh, this has all been a scam. People can't really change. They can tell you all sorts of things. It's all deception, and it's all the last ditch effort of the ego child's mind. That doesn't mean that you're about to turn the light switch on and go, eureka, I'm conscious. No. There is no eureka, I'm conscious. What it does tell you is you're near losing some very core issues that your ego child's mind's afraid to lose. So you must rely on the fact that you know more at that time. My darling clients will come in that are there and they'll say, ooh, I'm so mad at you. I know better. Or, oh, I'm just saying that you're an asshole, and I know better, and that's great. I don't mind hearing those things, but I sure do like to hear you know better. Okay? I will say all along that this is a funny business, because sometimes I have to fight you for you, because you're not fighting for you. And what I'm fighting for that is you is that authenticity, is that forward progress into that and into your potential, darlings, because your potential is right there in that, right? Okay. Moving along now, our next point is to develop courage to face your fears. I just love some of this because I got to tell you, it ain't this easy. Courage comes from your going through the levels. It isn't something you can just turn on. It's something that opens and opens and opens on deeper levels because you see that consciousness is a real thing. You want more. At one point, you go to any of us and you say, "I don't care what you find, just find it." But in the beginning, we're all afraid of what's going to find. Oh, maybe we'll find something bad. Well, we're all going to find something bad, and maybe going to find something good. In fact, we all do. If God is all you are, what the hell are you doing being afraid and hiding your light under that bushel the Bible talks about? We're all afraid of what the child mind tells us to be afraid of. Come on, we don't need to do that. You know, I've said all along, you're called for this or you're not. And I'm going to say that life is giving us tons of opportunities to heed the call. One of the things that coronavirus is about, and some of the other things that are out there. You know, I've got lots to say about this. I'm hesitating to go forward into it because I want to talk with you about it all at one time, which will be next week. You know, but you must have courage to just take the next step. It's just the next step. It doesn't mean that you can, and you can stop anywhere you want. Most people do not stop. But just the next step, guys. Don't think you're just, you know, putting everything on your plate at once. No, you don't have to do that. But life is change. And if you're going to have a good life, you've got to learn to go with change and be adaptable and evolve. And that means deepening and thinking different thoughts and having different feelings and merging with the higher mind. She goes on to say, and I want to address this, our authentic self often has a lot of fear, sadness, and anger. Our true selves were hurt, and that's why the adaptive self took over. Okay, now let's make this more specific. Our authentic self actually fits in with humanity because it's experienced everything. Don't you understand that that's a good thing? Don't you understand that that's a privilege? Our authentic self does not deny our feelings of sadness. It is, hey, who is writing that? I think that was my husband. Our authentic selves fit in with humanity. We fit in because we have all the hurts that everybody else does. We understand grief. We get anger. We get it. But we don't stay there. It's just a part of the mix, guys. It's the child's mind that stays there and runs away. Oh, hey, Jim. It's Jim. Hi, darling. You see, it's the child's mind that stays there and holds on to resentment and fear and everything else. That's the child's mind. Don't be fooled. It exists in the authentic self because you're human. But it's not all that's there. In the child's mind, it's often all that's there. Don't you get it? Even if you're not consciously thinking about it all the time, and you wouldn't consciously think about it all the time because it's uncomfortable, it would be a threat, so you do something else to distract yourself. We fool ourselves in a million ways. We'll say we're very forgiving when we're not at all. We have to face what we're doing in order to do something else, just the way it is. And the authentic self is about feeling it all, being here, being a full participant in life. But the ego child's mind says, I hurt, and I'm not going to hurt anymore. Two paths, guys. Okay. You address this slowly and methodically and carefully with a good coach or somebody that can help you get through this. I urge you to find somebody, because your ego child's mind is going to let you go so far. Meditation is going to make you feel better about what you already have, but it's not going to give you the challenges and make you do something different. Life is. Life is going to make you do something different. And you'll either go through it with grace because you're doing the work on yourself, or you won't. We need to know these things that exist in consciousness. You understand? You're being called to know these things. I'm doing the best I can with the radio show. But guys, there's so much more. There's so much more. And you're going to be safe in it. You will. Now's the time, by the way, to put some study groups together. Everybody watch something. Everybody get on Skype. Everybody talk. Everybody shift. Everybody change. Everybody open their minds. Everybody have conversations about things they believe or don't believe. That's a way to handle this well. I also say my darling friend that I am so proud of, who is now creating, said something so cute that it never occurred to me the other day. She has made all these dates with people on Skype or on the phone to have virtual lunches together. Isn't that fun? Virtual lunches, virtual dinners. I just think it's the most fun thing in the world. It would never have occurred to me to do that. Oh, I call my friends and everything. But why don't we have lunch together? I just missed a friend's birthday. I'm so sorry about that, Jan. But we could still do it in all of this crazy time, you see? Dears, I'm going to stop right there. We are going to next week talk about the coronavirus. I only have 2 minutes left in the show. And then we'll come back to more of this. We'll start this in 2 weeks. But I think we better address what's on the table to address first. What do you think? If you have a different opinion, by all means, call me or write me. I'm at Martha at Novak, Novak.com. I have to think for a minute about, I never write myself, so I never remember. Don't be afraid.
90 seconds.
Do your work. Do stay safe. For God's sake, spray your hands with alcohol. I've gone to the liquor store and bought Everclear and Golden Grain. I understand there's some alcohol out there called diesel or something that has 180 proof. Try to get over 150. Spray your hands. Be careful. Stay out of crowds. All those things are true. But there's a lot more to
60
do
seconds.
that take you forward and that connect you with humanity now. Okay, guys, we'll talk more about this next week. I wish you all a happy life. Stay safe. God is here. Dear God, thank you. I know you have us all. We ask that any listener to the show right now entertains that idea too, or knows it deeply within their being, and it gives them peace. We thank you so much for all of this, and we say, dear God, thank you for everything, it all, and so it is. Amen. Okay, guys, have a great week. Stay well. See you next week. Bye-bye.